Hey Caleb, I've got a question for you.
Sure, what is it, Caleb?
Can you tell me about the complications of modern urban revitalization and how it connects to some historical planning themes we've discussed in class?
Of course, and I'll explore a specific example we are both familiar with, the Interloop Removal Project in Rochester. First, some context. The Interloop Expressway was built from 1952 to 1965 and was supported by Federal Aid Highway Act of 1944 and the subsequent act in 1956. This map shows a flyover view of the area before and after construction. As I slide over, you can see the path of destruction that occurred as a result of the Interloop's conception.
But why was this built?
We can draw connections to what is discussed in the article A Colonial Genealogy of Planning and Unlearning the Colonial Cultures of Planning. Porter describes tactics of ordering and categorizing people for the sake of modernity used during colonialization in the 19th and 20th centuries. It's also important to note that urban planning, like other disciplines, was professionalized during the 20th century. In the article The Birth of Organized City Planning in the United States, 1909 to 1910, Peterson discusses how, as urban planning became more widely accepted as a profession, we saw the emergence of comprehensive city planning that focused on improvements to public standards.
So, in the Interloops case, is the replacement of neighborhoods with an urban expressway to keep up with the more status quo movements of planning in the mid 20th century?
Yeah, I think you're right. In fact, redlining documents used to categorize areas in cities around the US in the 1930s and 40s described the areas around the Interloop as far from homogeneous, of unattractive vintage, and for the laboring classes who cannot afford better.
Interesting. Was anything added to replace the housing that would have been lost because of the project?
In typical mid century urban renewal fashion, two affordable housing towers were subsequently built in areas of the northern and eastern portions of the Interloop.
So, with a top down approach to planning at this time, these neighborhoods were wiped away with little regard for the communities that existed there? So, does this matter today?
Of course. In the article Why Green Climate Gentrification Threatens Poor and Vulnerable Populations, the authors discuss the consequences of what is called green gentrification. They describe it as not taking into account the new green and environmentally resilient 21st century cities' impacts on the surrounding communities.
So, as the trend of turning cities green has gained popularity, has this become the 21st century's status quo movement that echoes the same principles of spatial control and modernity, much like was seen in both colonial planning and mid 20th century planning? And are you saying climate resilient cities are bad?
No, I'm definitely not saying that. Our city should be striving to become more eco friendly. I think what's important to point out, however, is that if this is not done correctly, we run the risk of repeating our planning history yet again at the detriment of the most vulnerable groups of people in society.